Hi, I'm Joshua. I'm here with medfordtools.com today. In our previous videos, we have covered the simple, direct 90-degree notches on either side of tubing. And in another video, we discussed a complex double 45-degree notch to meet up with two existing 90-degree points of tube, as well as a multi-angle cut where you have a bracing joint at a 55 and a 35-degree angle. You can do it at any angle, but it's a good demonstration of the abilities of our sink notching system. We're going to discuss today something a little bit more complex. We're going to discuss a very complex angle where you're trying to brace between two very different planes, axes, and angles, and how to accomplish that using the same tools that we've demonstrated in our other videos. So on this complex notch, we're going to use a standard piece of 1.5" tubing like we've been demonstrating with, and we're going to join these two very, very different angled components. This cross brace may not be common, but you never know when you're going to need an odd brace. So to hold this, normally we would use clamps. In this particular orientation and angle, it'd be very difficult to hold this accurately without losing where you're clocked on your tubing. And clocked tubing in the correct orientation and angle is what gives you a clean fit joint. So we're going to use something very fancy, our newest tool, and use tape to align it. Using our Sink Series Scotch tape, we can position the tape in the angle that we want the tubing to be positioned in and use our sink bev to find our angles. So in this particular case, our sink bev can be positioned on the tubing and lined up with the Scotch tape. And once you have those two positions, you can use that to translate with the notcher and have our Sink 180 notcher translate this angle into an accurate notch for the first notch. For the second notch, once the first is clocked, we can use this again to find the second angle. Now that we have found the angle of the tape, we are going to copy that angle using our sink bev, and we're going to reference the angle from our tape to the Sink 180 Junior notcher. We're going to tighten that handle down, and using the degree marks on the Sink 180 Junior, we determine that it is a 25-degree angle. Using our Sink 180 Junior software, we know that a 1.5" tube at 0.95 wall, we have a 3/4 inch from the end of the tubing for an accurate notch. When we measure out 3/4 inch from the end of the tubing, we can align that mark with the teeth of the hole saw, and that will be the correct spot to notch for a 25-degree angle. The way we know that that notch was successful was the back wall was slightly notched to create a clean fitment on that 25-degree notch. As in a previous video, we highlighted the need to have your tubing in a jig in order to properly align the tubing for measurement. We're going to align it with just a simple clamp to hold a piece of tubing in place. The piece of tubing that we just finished notching and deburring, we're going to fit up to our jig, and when it is in position, we can then use our tools, our center line finder and our snap collar, to find the center line for the intersection of this piece of tubing. What can help is drawing a line between our center line. We're going to put the snap collar on the acute side of our notch, and we're going to slide it down to where we found our center line using our center line finder and our sink bev to draw the line. When looking from a 90-degree perspective above the two pieces of tubing, you can find that intersection point, which we drew beneath that snap collar. Using our software, we can find that the distance from the end of the tubing and our notch point. All we need to discover now is the angle, which we will use our sink bev to find. Our sink bev lined up with both the tubing and the tape gives us an angle, and we can use our Sink 180 Junior to determine that specific angle. We have found the angle using our Sync Bev, and we're gonna copy that angle using the Sync Bev in our Sync 180 Junior arm and jaws. When using the Sync Bev to copy that angle, we found that on the Sync 180 Junior, the degrees read 17 degrees. Our Sync 180 software tells us that a 17-degree angle on 1.5-inch tubing at an 0.95 wall needs to be 5/8 of an inch from the end of the tubing to begin the notch. And that will be our end of tubing. Now that we have our tube cut to the correct length, we can position the tube in our notcher and use the snap collar indicator to ensure that we have the correct distance from the end of the tube and our centerline marking aligned. We can use our flat stock and our centerline finder to determine if we are in the correct position clockwise. And it appears as though, yes, we have achieved success. And now that we have our tube clocked, we can remove our flat stock and our centerline finder and push the arbor up to minimize chatter. And if we have our tubing and our hole saw aligned with the teeth at our mark that we've made, then we will have a clean notch. Confirmation once again of a good notch. The backside was slightly notched. We're ready to remove our jig, and I believe our tubing should fit successfully. And it fits in the spot that we marked, and it doesn't move. So we have successfully completed a notch that is clocked in 2 different axes with something as simple as tape and our Sync Notching family of tools. Watching our notching videos hopefully has been informative, and using our notching tools like our Sync Snap Collars, as well as our Sync Centerline Finder, and not but least our Sync Bev. Hopefully they've taken part of the complexity and frustration out of the basic notching that most people run into. Our Sync 180 Junior and software are included on our website in both packages and individually. Between the family of items, you can generally create a work that is clean, efficient, and beautiful. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to visit medfordtools.com for a wide selection of bending, notching, and woodworking tools. We have a wide variety of tools for purchase. Don't hesitate to visit our site for current pricing.